Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Game that happened, final score in the South Regional. The game was played in, where was it played at? It was played in Milwaukee. So South Regional in Milwaukee, Ole Miss versus UNC. And of course, UNC, we know about the controversy to open the week. We know about the fact that they did get let in, whatever, it's over. They beat San Diego State. Everybody says, can they make a run in the NCAA tournament? They got in, they beat San Diego State. No, they largely get walloped by Ole Miss. They were down 18 points at the half. As they've basically done all year. They made a run in the second half. It wasn't enough. They came up short. They lose this game. Final score 71-64. Okay. Now listen, I could sit here all day and break down this game and what does it mean for Ole Miss? They're going to play Iowa State, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's what most of you care about. And I certainly don't think it's what most Carolina fans care about. What Carolina fans care about is that this season, even if you get into the NCAA tournament, it did not live up to expectations. And the conversation shouldn't be about, should we have been in the tournament? Should we have not been in the tournament? The conversation should be about, how do we make sure that that never happens ever again? That we're never on the cusp of the NCAA tournament, that we're never, needing to hope and pray. And frankly, I'll say this, I don't want to speak for Carolina fans because I don't speak for any fan base, not even UConn, my alma mater. But I think a lot of Carolina fans were like, I don't even want to go to the NCAA tournament. I know they were playing better down the stretch, but I think a lot of people are more curious for what is ahead this offseason. And it goes without saying, this is the most important offseason of Hubert Davis's career. 2 years ago, after you start number one and miss the NCAA tournament, that one was really important. He knocked it out of the park, retained Armando Bacot, retained RJ Davis, added a couple really nice pieces. Well, he has his work to do this offseason. And I want to talk about what they need to do to make sure that this does not happen again, because he ain't getting another year to fix it. And we talked about it at the time, but when he started publicly talking about needing a GM, which I know a GM has since been hired, that's when I knew. He talked to his AD, him and the AD basically agreed, you're going to get one more year, figure it out, no excuses, we'll give you what you need. By the way, Carolina fans should mention, if you want to go to Raleigh this weekend to root against the Duke Blue Devils, you can get tickets on SeatGeek. SeatGeek.com, use promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. Just go buy some, root against Duke. UConn fans, if you're in the chat, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Kentucky fans, if you're in the chat, you want to go to Milwaukee, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Okay, so Carolina, what needs to happen in the offseason? First of all, I'll say this, I'm just fascinated by who comes back. Okay, so we know RJ Davis has graduated. I think that's the term, right? People get mad when you say he did graduate. It's like, oh, no, he has been graduated. I don't know. There's some fancy terminology for it, whatever. He's out of eligibility. 5 years, was the ACC Player of the Year a year ago, mostly struggled. I don't think it was totally his fault. I think the roster was kind of too many small guards, whatever. But RJ Davis is gone. I think what'll be really interesting is what happens from there. It's early. We just don't know what this roster is going to look like. But I'll say this is, Ian Jackson and Drake Powell to me are fascinating. Ian Jackson by the end of the year played pretty well. He finished averaging about 12 points, 40% shooting from three. But listen, the last 5 games are pretty reflective of the up and down nature of the Ian Jackson experience. 1 point against Ole Miss, 9 against San Diego State, 0 against Duke in that NCAA tournament game, 3 against Wake Forest in the ACC tournament. And how about this? 4. So in his final 5 games this season, a total of 17 points. And so I just bring it up because this kid was a projected one and done. This kid was this kid was that. He had his moments. He was even great, I would say, for about a 6-7 game stretch in the middle of the year. But he's so up and down. Same with Drake Powell. And listen, if anybody wants to go pro, if anybody wants to, just, hey, I want to, try, I don't want to be in school or I want to try to make it, whatever, blah, blah, that's fine. But both of those guys, I think their draft stock has tank's not the right word, but I don't think it was as strong as it was going into the year. And I'll also say this is I don't think in 2025, now again, everyone's financial situation is different. I'm not telling people what to do. But if you're not good enough to go in the first round, come back to college because you're getting paid in college. And like, again, I don't know the financials at North Carolina. I think they were a little behind in NIL. We'll get to that in a minute. But you're going to get paid at Carolina. Come back, get better, be part of a program that you've wanted to be part of. Ian Jackson talks about his relationship with Hubert Davis. Text him every morning, text him every night, whatever. And Drake Powell, by the way, is a North Carolina guy. Why are you rushing to the NBA when you can come back, make money, and get better in college? I think, by the way, I think we're going to see this across college basketball over the next, frankly, this offseason, but then even beyond that going forward. I think we're going to see a lot of kids say, you know what? I can go take a chance to be a second-round pick. I'm just going to stay and make bank here. So what do those guys do? Obviously, Elliot Cadeau is not an NBA prospect. You hear a little buzz, 2 seasons for him. Is it possible that he could transfer 9 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists per game? I mean, he could. I don't think his issues are North Carolina related. I think his issues are he's a 6'1" point guard that doesn't shoot the ball very well. And the shooting was better to his credit this year, 34%. So to me, another one, come back. It's not a Carolina problem that you shoot 34%. You shoot 37, 38%. You're a different player. You're an All-American. You're probably a multi-million-dollar college basketball player going forward. And so I think, to me, I'm just curious to see what those 3 are going to do. I assume Cadeau is back. The other 2 are better NBA prospects, but I think they kind of, I think both of their draft stocks were hurt, and I just don't understand why you would come back. I think the big thing going forward is you got to backfill. Now, the good news, and I should mention this, Caleb Wilson is coming, right? 5-star. We talked about Caleb Wilson a lot. Did a lot of updates on Caleb Wilson. 6'8", 6'9" forward from Atlanta. We don't need to reevaluate him in real time. But, the recruitment came down to Kentucky and Carolina. He chooses Carolina at 2 a.m. Eastern time on Inside the NBA. He wants to do it in his town of Atlanta. That's okay. But that was a big win for Hubert Davis. And so you have Caleb Wilson. We'll see who else comes back around him. And then finally, let me say this. You hired the GM. And I've said this, and I stand by it. I know some Carolina fans agree. Some Carolina fans disagree. I think you just have to, if you're Carolina, you have to be, you needed to elevate the NIL. That's why you hired the GM. And so now there's no excuse. You have a guy focused solely on fundraising, solely on reaching out to people in the community, solely on making sure your basketball players get paid. NBA background, Jim Tanner, I believe his daughters may have gone to UNC. I can't remember all the details. But this guy has connections. This guy has contacts. Now it's time to go raise money and get a real team. Because the one thing, and we've talked about it for a calendar year now, you go back to the portal last year, Carolina just could not land players because the high finance, the high price transfers were going other places. They went after so many big men. Jonas Adu ends up at Arkansas. Who else? Cliff Omoyori ends up at Alabama. I think they kind of made a run at Agana and Yenso, which I didn't love, but he ends up at Kansas State. And there's a few others. I can't remember everybody, but they just missed on guy after guy after guy after guy after guy. And I will say this is a team that, was never great, but I think you have a true 5-man. It's a completely different season. They weren't that far off. Remember, they almost won at Kansas. Clearly, easily could have beaten Duke the other day. Played Florida tough. You think about some of the games that they played, like they were in a lot of these games. They just didn't have the size. So to me, that's the big thing. You have to get a true 5-man, and you're out of excuses in the portal with NIL money because you now have a GM. So we'll talk plenty about Carolina. I'm sure they are going to hit the ground running. Should mention, by the way, Seth Trimble, actually turned into a really good player. And I say actually not in a negative way, just he was a guy that maybe we weren't talking about enough in the preseason. 12 points per game. He's a junior. He has another year of eligibility. I assume he's going to be back. I'll say this. I actually think Carolina's going to bounce back. I'm a little bit higher on them. I just thought, it's easy in hindsight to talk about what a disaster it was. But we also talked last May and June when we did our off-season evaluation pieces that they just don't have a big guy. And if you don't have a 5, how are you going to survive in college basketball in 2025? So I do think that, Carolina, I think now that they have the GM, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, some of the money stuff in order, now it's time to go get some players. They're going to do that starting Monday. By the way, we are going to have wall-to-wall portal coverage, not just of Carolina, but of everybody. So make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel.